Good morning, everyone. Uh, this is going to be the fourth part of the assignment for assignment two. We had the value study, then we had the value study with a translucent glaze put over it, considered a grisaille. Then we had an analogous color harmony that was rendered as high key. And now we are working on a complementary color harmony, meaning two colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel. And I'm going to be working that with a low key register. All right. This would have been done last night, which it already is done, but the file, and I'll tell you all about this in the class, the file that I did when I created this particular low key complementary color harmony was corrupted in the file transfer. And so I tried my best to fix the file. That wasn't going to happen. So I'm having to redo this particular demo for the low key complementary colors. All right. And so for this, I actually used orange and blue as the complementary color harmony. So since I've done this, then what I'm going to do is just use a second set of complementary colors, which are yellow and violet. All right, so I'll be using yellow and violet for this particular composition or this particular painting. Okay, all right. So same process that we had before. We're going to go through and I'm going to sketch in the, there we go. I'm going to use a color pencil. I'm going to sketch in the composition very simply and easily. And I'll make it a little bit darker this time. I saw in the other videos that you really couldn't see it that well. So I'm just going to make a really simple sketch here. And what I'm doing is, if you're just seeing this one as the first one, if you chose to use this one as the first one, then what I'm doing is actually going about halfway down the format on the plane here and going about an inch under halfway. All right, so I'm going about halfway down horizontally and dividing that in half. And then I'm going to go 1 inch below that. All right, and then I'm going to consider the halfway mark vertically. All right, and I'm going to sketch my circle on the left side of that vertical line. All right. And as I said, the reason that we want to do that is because we're creating a composition. So we want to think about this as a composition, not so much just a circle being in the middle of a composition. So we're using this negative space on this side as an opportunity to create our cast shadow on that side. All right. And we're going to get a sense of everything moving from left to right. All right. Okay. And so we'll go ahead and start it up. So as for right now, I have violet and it's very dark. It almost looks black in the camera here. So I have violet and yellow, and I do have some white. More than likely with this, we won't have to use any black. If I need to, then I'll bring it in. But we're just trying to make a very dull, dull is not a negative term. I don't want you to think of it as a negative term. We're looking to get a sense of how relative lights and darks are, but we're also trying to get a sense of how relative brights and dulls are. All right, that's another one of the color traits. All right, every color on the color wheel has 3 color traits, and that is hue, which is a color's name, and value, which is the lightness or darkness of a color, and then we have intensity, which is the relative brightness or dullness of a color. So with that last one we had analogous colors which were very bright in intensity, still using lights and darks. And then the one that I did before, we're still using lights and darks values. So we have light areas, and then we have dark areas next to it to create a relative value study, if you want to call it that. But we also have colors that are very dull. Okay, so even though this isn't an orange, we're going to say that it's a dull orange. Even though this is a blue, we're going to say that it's a dull blue. Okay, so this is based upon intensity as opposed to just lights and darks. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start it up. And just like we did the last time on the analogous one, I'm just going to create a ground. And that ground is I'm going to make it as kind of brownish as I can here. And on this, you're not really worried about trying to go, or you keep your brush strokes one directional. So we can actually go in all directions if you'd like. Okay. And just the same as the others, I'm going to keep the same sense of a dull, darker backdrop. And then we will use more of a lighter value for the ball. If you do want to go the opposite way and use a lighter backdrop and use a darker ball, I'm completely fine with that. Either one is going to be okay. You're still going to get the same bit of information and the same concept throughout. I'm just laying down colors right now because I'm going to come back over this and kind of thin the pigment out of my brush, and I will basically use some of this pigment that's down here. I'll use that as lights and darks. All right, so the pigment is already darker than the area that's around it, which was the gessoed backdrop. So since that is there, then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to blend or spread this paint around a little bit. And I do want you to try to go this route. I mean, this is something that we really need to understand how to do. Once you get everything in quickly and you render it fast enough, you'll see that you won't have to spend nearly as much time on your painting as you might think that you should or need to. Okay, do the same thing in my ball here. I'm just gonna think of this as just kind of pushing paint. All you're doing is just kind of pushing the paint around. And this is what I meant before, where we were saying that we don't really need that outline that you have. I mean, when you first start drawing the image in, you don't really need that outline per se to kind of create an idea of where these objects are in space. Let's just create a little bit of a shadow here. And I'm blending my, if you blend the colors together, the violet and the yellow, you will get a little bit of a brown. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a little more of a neutral tone as opposed to a very intense tone. Or intense color, I'm sorry, not intense tone. All right, so now, so we have that violet in there, we're gonna again kind of building some of this yellow in. And whenever you have two complementary colors together, what you're gonna have is when you put them next to each other, they're really gonna stand out a whole lot more than if you put a color next to something that might be analogous to the color. So if I put the blue and the orange next to each other, then the blue is going to stand out more. It's going to be more vibrant. If I put the orange next to that, the orange is going to stand out and be more vibrant. If I take red and green, the red is going to appear more vibrant once it's next to the green, and vice versa. The green will also be just as intense once I put it next to the red. So I'm moving very quick, and I'm moving with this large brush just to get as much information in. And just like we said before, when you get to the point where the brush is more of a hindrance than a help, then you want to scale down on your brushes. So as for right now, my brush is still working well. These big, brushy, loose strokes are really going to kind of get you a little bit further, a little bit quicker than making very small strokes. So you want to grab your biggest brush that you have and try your best to use that brush before you commit to using a smaller brush. I'm going to move this light out of the way here. It's a little bit There we go. We can kind of get a sense of how dark and murky this is. I am kind of almost to the point of painting in the dark here. And that's intentional, so you can kind of get a sense of these lights and darks and the values rather. And I will bring the light back over here just to give you a sense of what everything looks like. And we are looking for these colors to blend with each other. The yellow is still going to appear yellowish by virtue of the two colors being opposite. So you're going to be able to see those individual colors enough, but we do want them to be as dull as you can make them. And you make them, or you create them as, you accomplish them being dull by mixing those two opposite colors together. And like I said, I will bring the light back over to give you a sense of what this looks like in the light. All right, so let's bring it back over and see here. All right, try to get it to where it's not going to cause too much of a, there we go. Won't cause too much of a glare on the surface. And you'll see that I'm picking up a lot of pigment. You have to be okay with spreading a lot of pigment down. Sometimes people get really antsy about putting a lot of pigment on their palette, but in order to get the paint to move as easily and as smoothly as you like, sometimes you do have to pick up a lot of pigment in order to have that happen. So be okay with using the pigment that you purchased. If you're not going to be painting much after this class, then no need to kind of hold on to the pigments that you have. And they're selling and, well, they're making and selling pigments every day. So if the pigment does run out, then I'm hoping that you're fortunate to go grab a little more pigment to kind of continue the process. One major thing that we're missing here is our shadow, so let's go ahead and bring that shadow back in and blend it out with the yellow as you move outward from it. Going to create a shadow on the form here. It's getting a bit dark in there, and that's what I'm wanting it to happen. And we can blend that again with a little more of the yellow there. Like I said, the idea of this is not to have it to where it's devoid of light. I'm not really wanting to kind of give you a sense that there's no light in this. It's just not as light, it's just not as bright. It's a bit dull, and that's what we're really looking for, is a sense of that dullness. Let's take a little bit of this yellow and start kind of separating the yellow from the backdrop here. This is a point where you actually can begin to kind of play with stronger lights. If you have really dark, dull colors, it's really easy to make areas a bit lighter and more intense. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, nothing wrong with creating lights and darks. So, lights and darks do not make things bright or dull. They just make them light or dark. So let's go ahead and bring some light in I'll blend it in with the yellow here. All right, so that really makes the yellow ball kind of pop a little bit more. You can kind of bring in a little more of that light in some of the other areas here. If it does, if you want to blend it in and make it a little bit darker, you can. But we're trying to just kind of create a little sense of a dramatic feel in the overall painting here. And I probably won't even have to use my smaller brushes too much. This is actually coming out to where the the information I'm wanting to have or give for it is kind of working okay. I may play around a little bit with a smaller brush just in a couple of little areas here. So I'm seeing that there is a little area that I might need to suggest a little more work. I'm now using my round brush. In the round brush, I can get a little more detail, a little closer to the object without it really affecting the object too much. The figure, and the ball is going to be considered the figure. I'm saying the object. I'm incorrect on that. Okay. Just going to clean up a couple little areas here. And then let's make it a little more dramatic. Let's go in and really hit it just so I can sort of reestablish that the eye